What if the stars of Hunter couldn't escape fate's cruel hand? They once lit up our screens with grit and justice, but off-screen, many fell into heartbreak, despair, and tragic ends you never imagined. Let's find out, and you won't believe what really happened. Charles Hallahan as Captain. Charlie Devane. Remember Captain Devane? The boss who always looked like he had the weight of the LAPD on his shoulders. Charles Hallahan gave him that mix of toughness and fairness that kept Hunter and McCall grounded. But behind the camera, Hallahan's real life wasn't nearly as steady. He came out of theater with huge ambitions, but stage acting rarely paid the bills. Even after landing roles in big movies like The Thing and Silkwood, he struggled to break free of typecasting. Hollywood kept calling him back to the same roles, the gruff cop, the stern official, and he hated that box they put him in. By the time he found his groove as Captain Devane in Hunter in 1986, Hallahan was already juggling non-stop work. Success finally brought him recognition, but it came at the cost of constant stress and a marriage that couldn't survive the chaos. His devotion to acting left deep cracks at home, and just when his career seemed to peak again with Dante's Peak in 1997, tragedy struck. Driving through Los Angeles, Hallahan suffered a massive heart attack and died instantly at only 54. The news stunned fans. The dependable actor everyone knew was gone in an instant. Charles Hallahan played Captain Charlie Devane in Hunter, 1986, when he was 43 years old. He passed away in 1997, but if he were alive in 2025, he would be 81 years old, remembered for his powerful roles, with an estate once valued around $2 million. John Amos as Captain. Dolan. Before Captain Devane, there was Captain Dolan, and nobody brought authority to Hunter quite like John Amos. With that trademark intensity, he played a leader who was stern, principled, and impossible to ignore. On screen, he commanded respect. But off-screen, Amos was fighting battles that most audiences never saw. Long before Hunter, Amos had already made waves on Good Times. He wanted honest portrayals of black families, not sitcom stereotypes, and he didn't stay quiet about it. His refusal to compromise clashed with producers, and the result was brutal. He was fired. That dismissal wasn't just a lost job. It was a professional wound that nearly derailed his entire career. Then came Roots. As the adult Kunta Kinte, Amos didn't just act. He became part of television history. But with that groundbreaking role came a new burden. Suddenly, he wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol. Every role afterward was compared to Roots, every performance judged by that cultural milestone. The pressure was enormous, and Amos often admitted that living under that shadow was both an honor and a curse. When Hunter came calling, Captain Dolan looked like a chance for reinvention, and for a while, it worked. Amos brought grit and gravitas that made the character unforgettable. But once again, creative clashes shortened his stay, and he was forced to move on. He stayed busy with movies like Coming to America and Die Hard 2, and later found steady work on TV. Yet no matter how much he accomplished, Amos never fully escaped the weight of earlier struggles. John Amos played Captain Dolan in Hunter, 1984, when he was 45 years old. He passed away in 2024 at the age of 84, leaving behind a legacy of groundbreaking roles, hard-won battles, and an estimated net worth of $5 million. Darlan Flugel as Sergeant Joanne Malensky. She came into Hunter in 1990 like a storm. Tough, fearless, and magnetic as Sergeant Joanne Malensky. Fans loved the spark she brought alongside Fred Dryer, but Darlan Flugel's life behind the badge was far harder than anything her character faced. Her battles started young. At just 16, her father died suddenly from a brain tumor. To help her family survive, she became a model at 17, earning $300 an hour at her peak. But success came with a bitter taste. She often said modeling made her feel used, and no matter how glamorous it looked, she carried the pain of being forced into adulthood too soon. When she broke into acting, she fought to be taken seriously. Roles in Once Upon a Time in America, 1984, with Robert De Niro, and To Live and Die in L.A., 1985, with William Peterson, proved her talent. But Hollywood still saw her as the model trying to act, and every audition meant another exhausting uphill climb. Even Hunter didn't give her the growth she wanted. Her character was written out after just 7 episodes. Off-screen, the pressure ate at her. Her marriage to composer Michael Ira Small collapsed, leaving her depressed and isolated. Then came the cruelest blow. In 2009, at just 56, she was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. The disease stole her memory, her independence, and eventually her ability to even recognize her children. Darlene Flugel played Sergeant Joanne Malensky in Hunter, 1990, when she was 37 years old. She passed away in 2017 at age 64 after an 8-year battle with Alzheimer's, leaving behind an estate valued at around $1 million. John Sheeran as Lieutenant Ambrose Finn. As Lieutenant Ambrose Finn, John Sheeran gave Hunter something rare, a steadying presence, a character who seemed untouched by chaos. But his real life was far more fragile. Behind the uniform and calm delivery was a man carrying scars that never healed. Sheeran's time in Vietnam never left him. The images followed him home, and insomnia turned into nights drowned in alcohol. Hollywood only made it worse. Every audition, every rejection chipped away at his confidence. His marriage to actress Jennifer Wilson cracked under the weight of constant travel and his drinking, leaving their children caught between 2 parents pulled in opposite directions. Even when he landed work in films like Eating Raoul, 1982, or series such as Brett Maverick, he lived with the fear of it all disappearing. By the time Hunter hired him in 1985, he was already asking himself whether acting was worth the torment. Fame was never guaranteed, and the cost at home was too high. He found stability later as chair of the theater department at East Carolina University, directing over 45 productions and mentoring a generation of actors. But that peace was brief. In his 60s, illness crept in, a decline he never spoke about publicly, and his career as a teacher ended in silence, with students shocked when he suddenly vanished from the stage. John Sheeran played Lieutenant Ambrose Finn in Hunter, 1985, when he was 41 years old. He died in 2017 at 72 after a short but undisclosed illness, leaving behind an estate estimated at $1.5 million. Arthur Rosenberg as Dr. Leonard Green and Captain Lester Kane. Arthur Rosenberg was never the star, but in Hunter his roles as Dr. Leonard Green and Captain Lester Kane gave the show weight. A doctor you trusted, a captain you respected. Yet away from the set, his life was a lesson in how easily Hollywood forgets the men who give it backbone. Early on, Rosenberg had brushes with success. Being There, 1979, Cujo, 1983. But instead of breaking through, he was boxed into minor parts. The money barely covered bills, and humiliation followed him from audition rooms to his marriages, both of which collapsed under the strain. He once admitted the rejection felt like dying a little each day, and for him, acting became less of a dream and more of a slow bleed. By the mid-'80s, even while working on Hunter, Rosenberg had already started searching for something Hollywood could never give him: peace. He reconnected with his Jewish faith, and what began as a private return to tradition transformed into a second calling: rabbinical studies. The blow that changed everything came in 2015 when his friend Leonard Nimoy died of COPD. The grief hit so hard that Rosenberg almost walked away from public life entirely. Instead, he chose service. As a rabbi and chaplain for the Motion Picture and Television Fund, he sat with forgotten actors, comforting them in their last days. For many, he became the only family they had left. Arthur Rosenberg played Dr. Leonard Green and Captain Lester Kane in Hunter, 1984, when he was 52 years old. In 2025, he is 93 years old, remembered not only as an actor, but as a spiritual guide, with an estimated net worth of $3 million. Richard Beauchamp as Carlos. Carlos, the medical examiner who showed up across 20 episodes of Hunter's second and third seasons, was never the star. But Richard Beauchamp gave him weight. He made the morgue scenes feel real, grounding the show in science and truth. Off-screen, though, his own truth was heavy with loss. In the early 1980s, tragedy struck when Richard's brother died in a car accident. It shattered him. He carried that grief into every job afterward, and while he kept working, the joy of acting never fully returned. His credits in Hill Street Blues and Deadly Force gave him solid exposure, but deep down he was battling depression that left him drained. Instead of stepping back, Beauchamp pushed harder. He took every role offered, often working to the point of exhaustion. By the time Hunter cast him in 1985, he was already running on empty. Playing Carlos brought stability for a while, but the grind of Hollywood, constant auditions, long hours, the fight to stay relevant, only deepened his fatigue. He never quite got that breakout role he hoped for. Hollywood's doors didn't fully open, and the gap between his talent and the roles he was offered became one of his deepest frustrations. Those who worked with him remembered a man who poured everything into his craft, even when it took more from him than it gave back. Richard Beauchamp played Carlos in Hunter, 1985, when he was 53 years old. He died far too young in 1994 at just 44, leaving behind a modest estate of about $800,000 and the memory of a career filled with both promise and heartbreak. Gary Crosby as Smitty. In Hunter, Gary Crosby turned up as Smitty, a streetwise presence who added grit and realism to the series. For Crosby, the role was just another stop in a career that never escaped the long shadow of his famous father, Bing Crosby. His childhood was nothing like the picture-perfect Crosby image. Gary later revealed in his memoir Going My Own Way that behind closed doors was strict discipline that bordered on cruelty, paired with a mother who drank herself into an early death. That legacy left scars he carried for life. On screen, Gary had bright spots, singing with Bing on Sam's Song and acting in films like Battle at Bloody Beach, 1961, and alongside Elvis in Girl Happy, 1965. He even found steady TV work on Adam 12 as Officer Ed Wells. But alcohol followed him from his teens, derailing momentum and locking him into roles that never quite matched his talent. The pain only deepened as two of his brothers, Dennis and Lindsay, died by suicide. Gary himself went through 3 divorces and bouts of financial instability, his tell-all book leaving him isolated from the family name that defined him. Gary Crosby played Smitty in Hunter, 1984, when he was 51 years old. He died in 1995 at age 62 from lung cancer, leaving behind an estate of about $500,000, proof that even fame's eldest son can live and die in struggle. James Whitmore, Jr., as Sergeant Bernie Terwilliger. Bernie Terwilliger was the comic relief every gritty cop show needed, lighthearted, likable, and quick with a quip. James Whitmore, Jr. made Bernie memorable, but his real story was one of constant reinvention and pressure. As the son of James Whitmore, Sr., an Emmy and Golden Globe winner, expectations were sky high from the start. Audiences and casting directors alike saw the famous last name and expected instant greatness. That shadow made every audition harder, because no matter how much he achieved, he was measured against his father. Acting gave him visibility in The Rockford Files, Ba Ba Black Sheep, and then Hunter in 1984. But steady work didn't equal satisfaction. When his run as Bernie ended after just 2 seasons, Whitmore found himself at a crossroads. The stress of scraping for supporting roles wore him down, and he knew he needed a different path to survive in Hollywood. Directing became his salvation. At first, producers were skeptical, but over time he proved himself. He built a second career behind the camera, shaping landmark episodes of Quantum Leap, The X-Files, NCIS, Bones, and many more. Even then, personal life carried its own blows, none bigger than losing his father in 2009, a painful reminder of the bond and the legacy he carried. James Whitmore Jr. played Sergeant Bernie Terwilliger in Hunter, 1984, when he was 36 years old. Today, in 2025, he is 77 years old, still working as a respected television director, with an estimated net worth of around $4 million. Garrett Morris as Arnold Sporty James. Sporty James wasn't your typical informant. Streetwise, witty, and always with one foot in trouble. Garrett Morris made him unforgettable in Hunter, but the man behind the role carried struggles that nearly ended his career and his life. Long before Hunter, Morris broke barriers as the very first black cast member on Saturday Night Live in 1975. But instead of being celebrated, he often felt trapped in stereotypes, reduced to playing caricatures when he wanted roles with depth. The frustration followed him through 5 turbulent years on the show, leaving him bitter and nearly pushing him out of comedy for good. The 1980s weren't easier. Though he found steady work on TV shows like The Jeffersons and later Martin, tragedy hit in 1994 when he was shot during an attempted robbery. He barely survived, spending months recovering and even working his injury into his character's exit on Martin. It was a brutal reminder of how quickly life could be taken away. Morris kept going, bouncing back with roles in The Jamie Foxx Show and later Two Broke Girls, proving he still had the comic timing that first made him stand out. But the trauma of being shot never fully left him, and for years he struggled with both the physical and emotional aftermath. Even when honored with his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2024, he admitted the road had been far rougher than fans ever imagined. Garrett Morris played Sporty James in Hunter, 1985, when he was 48 years old. Now, in 2025, at 88 years old, he continues to be celebrated as a comedy pioneer with an estimated net worth of about $2 million. Bruce Davison as Captain Weiler and Deputy Chief Weiler. Fans of Hunter will remember Captain Weiler, stern, upright, a man who lived by the rules even when Hunter and McCall bent them. Bruce Davison carried that role with natural authority in the mid-'80s, but away from the set, his life was often anything but steady. Davison broke out years earlier in the cult classic Willard, 1971, and by the time Hunter came calling in 1985, he had already survived more than a decade of Hollywood ups and downs. He landed great roles, then watched them fade. Success in one project never guaranteed the next. The constant rise and fall wore him down, and even as he played Weiler with confidence, his personal life was quietly falling apart. 3 marriages ended in divorce, each one leaving scars and straining his relationship with his 2 children. That heartbreak followed him into the height of his career. He was nominated for an Oscar and won a Golden Globe for Longtime Companion, 1989, a role that also turned him into a powerful voice in the fight against AIDS. But while the world applauded, Davison himself admitted he struggled to balance the spotlight with the loneliness of failed love. Later came more career highs, starring in Harry and the Hendersons, appearing in Robert Altman's Shortcuts, and becoming known to a new generation as Senator Robert Kelly in X-Men, 2000. Yet every triumph came with its own pressures. He never stopped working, but the price was years of emotional exhaustion and constant reinvention just to stay relevant. Bruce Davison played Captain Weiler in Hunter, 1985, when he was 39 years old. Now, in 2025, at age 79, he remains a respected veteran of over 270 roles, still acting and directing, with an estimated net worth of around $6 million. Stepfanie Kramer, as Sergeant D.D. McCall. On Hunter, Stepfanie Kramer brought to life Sergeant D.D. McCall, a tough, sharp detective who could match Rick Hunter punch for punch and wit for wit. You probably think of her as the fearless partner, but off-screen, her career was a constant fight to be taken seriously beyond the role that made her famous. Even in the early days, she was told she was too pretty for gritty drama, and proving herself meant pushing harder than most. During Hunter's run, the stress was overwhelming. The hours were grueling, the pressure of being the female lead never let up, and by the 6th season, she was completely burned out. What looked glamorous to fans was, in reality, years of exhaustion that left her drained and questioning her future in Hollywood. Kramer tried to shift gears after leaving the show in 1990. She poured herself into music, recording albums like One Dream and The Great American Songbook. But breaking into the industry as a TV star-turned-singer was nearly impossible, and the disappointment of shelved projects and missed opportunities left her frustrated. Film and TV roles kept her working, from Deceived by Trust, 1995, to The Cutting Edge, Going for the Gold, 2006, but nothing ever hit as hard as Hunter. On top of career struggles, her personal life added more weight when her marriage ended in 2001, leaving her to raise her daughter Lily while juggling career setbacks. Stephanie Kramer played Sergeant Dee Dee McCall in Hunter, 1984, when she was 28 years old. Now, in 2025, she is 69, still performing and writing, with an estimated net worth of $2 million. Fred Dryer as Detective Sergeant Rick Hunter. Everyone remembers Fred Dryer towering over the streets of Los Angeles as Sergeant Rick Hunter, a cop who lived by his own rules. But while the role made him a household name, Dryer's path through Hollywood was laced with rejection and disappointment. He was often dismissed as just a football player trying to act, and breaking free from that stereotype was a battle he never truly escaped. Early in his acting career, he nearly snagged the lead in Cheers before losing out to Ted Danson. That missed chance haunted him, reminding him of how quickly doors could slam in Hollywood. Even when Hunter became a hit, the industry didn't fully embrace him. Major film offers slipped away, leaving him stuck in the TV action box. The grind of Hunter itself was punishing. Long days filled with stunts, physical fights, and heavy scripts left him mentally and physically worn down. By the time the series ended in 1991, he was burned out, and Hollywood's interest had already cooled. Attempts to recapture that magic with projects like Land's End fizzled, adding to his frustration. Off-screen, his personal life mirrored the turmoil. His marriage to actress Tracy Vaccaro collapsed under the strain of fame and schedules, leaving him to raise his daughter while his career slowly faded. For someone once seen as unshakable, the cracks in his armor became all too visible. Fred Dryer played detective, Sergeant Rick Hunter in Hunter, 1984, when he was 38 years old. In 2025, he is 79, living quietly with his family and occasionally producing, with an estimated net worth of $5 million. Lauren Lane as Sergeant Chris Novak. When Lauren Lane stepped into Hunter's final season as Sergeant Chris Novak, she was handed a tough job, replacing Stephanie Kramer as the female lead. Novak was smart, disciplined, and unafraid to challenge Hunter, but for Lauren, the role came with pressure and expectations that weighed heavily. Fans compared her constantly to Dee Dee McCall, and that shadow followed her long after the series ended. Her career highs and lows were deeply tied to typecasting. After Hunter, she gained fame again as the sharp-tongued C.C. Babcock on The Nanny. The sitcom brought her laughs and recognition, but it also trapped her in a single comedic image. Casting directors often refused to see past the icy executive stereotype, and breaking away from it became one of her biggest struggles. The pressure of Hollywood wasn't kind to her personal life either. While juggling television work, she married David Wilkins and welcomed their daughter Kate in 1998. But the marriage crumbled in 2009, leaving her a single mother. The stress of balancing auditions, rejection, and motherhood eventually pushed her out of mainstream Hollywood. Instead, Lauren turned to the stage and teaching. She built a respected career in regional theater, winning B. Iden Payne Awards and working at institutions like the Kennedy Center. But even that came with challenges. The shift from primetime television to academia meant a drastic pay cut and the constant reminder of what might have been had Hollywood given her more opportunities. Lauren Lane played Sergeant Chris Novak in Hunter, 1991, when she was 30 years old. In 2025, at 64, she continues to teach acting at Texas State University in San Marcos while occasionally performing on stage, with an estimated net worth of $3 million. Rudy Ramos as Ruben Garcia. Ruben Garcia in Hunter was the dependable officer who often balanced grit with quiet loyalty. Not a flashy role, but one that gave the show authenticity. Behind the camera, Rudy Ramos knew exactly how it felt to be steady but overlooked. For decades, Hollywood saw him, but rarely gave him the spotlight he deserved. His career began with promise back in 1969 on Ironside, and soon after, as Wind on the High Chaparral, he became one of the few Native American and Latino actors regularly on TV. But after that early break, the doors didn't swing wide open. Instead, Ramos spent years fighting stereotypes, often cast as criminals, sidekicks, or background figures. The frustration of being typecast, while knowing he had more to offer, was a weight he carried for much of his career. Even his appearances in big titles like Beverly Hills Cop 2, 1987, and Colors, 1988, didn't change his fate. The films made money, audiences recognized his face, but Hollywood didn't see a leading man. He spoke openly about the grind of chasing roles that came and went too quickly, each paycheck followed by months of uncertainty. At times, the strain nearly drove him out of the business. What saved him was theater. On stage in Los Angeles, Ramos found a freedom denied to him in film and television. Productions like Short Eyes proved he had range and power, even if Hollywood wasn't watching. Still, the long years of financial insecurity took their toll, forcing him to balance acting with other jobs just to stay afloat. Only recently, with his recurring role as Felix Long on Yellowstone, did Ramos finally receive the recognition he had been denied for so long. Rudy Ramos played Ruben Garcia in Hunter, 1988, when he was 38 years old. In 2025, at 74 years old, he continues to act and appears on stage while enjoying a late-career revival with Yellowstone. His estimated net worth is around $1.5 million. From fame to heartbreak to untimely deaths, the stars of Hunter lived lives few of us ever knew. Which loss touched you the deepest? Share your thoughts below, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss the truth behind Hollywood's brightest faces.